Alrighty. Hi everybody. Figured we're at 6, so we'll get the event going here. I want to welcome everybody to tonight's event, Public Power, an overview of OPPD's demand side management programs. My name is Connor Nichols, and I'm one of the Renew Nebraska program managers for Conservation Nebraska. For those that are perhaps unfamiliar with us, Conservation Nebraska is a statewide nonprofit organization with a primary mission of protecting our state's natural legacy by educating the public and supporting communities. Tonight's event is going to cover a broad range of topics, including what demand side management is, some of the benefits it can provide to both utilities and customers, and what kind of programs and incentives OPPD has to offer to help you improve your energy efficiency, as well as potentially lower your bills. Presenting this information, we have Eric BenSalah. Eric is an energy advisor and educator for the Omaha Public Power District. Known in classrooms throughout OPPD's service territory as Mr. E, Eric's time is spent teaching classes to thousands of students every year about wind energy, solar energy, energy efficiency, and more as part of the Energy Education Program. In between classes, Eric helps OPPD's customers understand how energy works, how utilities operate, how to save energy, and all manner of odds and ends through YouTube videos, social media videos, and public speaking engagements. When he's not being Mr. E, Eric enjoys time at home or on a walk with his wife Angie and 2 dogs, Flapjack and Waffles. Eric is also an avid reader, giving himself a non-negotiable hour of reading every morning before he starts his day. Unable to get away from teaching, he also creates educational videos about ways to approach creating music as a drummer. Before we begin, I would like to remind everybody that per Zoom webinar, you are muted and have your cameras off. So if there are any questions you might have, please feel free to put them in the Q&A section towards the bottom of your screen. We do plan on having a period at the end of the presentation to answer any questions from the audience there might be. Additionally, we will be recording this presentation, so if you'd like to share it out or perhaps rewatch it in the future, please feel free to take a look at our YouTube channel under the name Conservation Nebraska. There will be a recording of this event posted there within a few weeks. There's also plenty more recorded events several years back that you could watch if there's any sort of other topics relating to conservation that you'd be interested in. Last but not least, if you have any questions or would like to learn more, feel free to email myself at cnichols@neconserve.org. I'll be putting that in the chat momentarily, but other than that, I will hand it over to Eric to take it away.
All right. Thank you, sir. Go ahead and share here. All righty. So first off, thank you everyone for being here. I am going to give you some information about saving energy and OPPD's demand side management programs, what they are, how they operate, all sorts of different things. I will sort of reintroduce myself. Yes, I'm Eric BenSalah. I will answer to Eric, Mr. E, Ben, whichever one ends up coming out. I answered all of them, but I am an energy advisor and educator at OPPD. I've been there for about 14 years now. I have a background in tech support, customer support and service. I actually learned a trade. I did heating and air conditioning for a handful of years as an apprentice. And my teaching kind of background, I was a drum instructor at Central High School for 3 years, as well as a percussion assistant and camp director for the Nebraska Masonic All-Star Marching Band. Tonight's agenda, we're going to start off with an energy efficiency and conservation crash course, just to kind of give us an idea about what saving energy means and how that kind of applies to the grand scheme of what we're going to talk about today. And then we're going to each step that we make along our little agenda here is going to kind of add on to kind of create this nice picture by the end there. But then we'll get into some utility definitions. If I'm going to explain how demand side management programs and how demand works and all that stuff, we have to kind of understand how the grid works first. So we'll throw in some definitions, give you a quick electricity 101 of how power gets from the power plant to your house. And then we'll get into those demand side management programs, what they are, how they operate, benefits, things like that. And then we will close things out before the resources portion with kind of a why. Why do we promote energy efficiency? Why do we have these types of programs to save and reduce energy in general, to kind of answer out everything that we just talked about? And then I'll share some resources as well. So we'll hop right in. Energy efficiency and conservation crash course. So both of those terms tend to be used interchangeably. They achieve the same thing two different ways. So we'll start off with conserving energy. This is going to be a behavior that we do to use less energy. Obviously, if we have less energy, it costs us less money to pay for it. But many times when we're conserving energy, we're also looking at potentially being a little bit more uncomfortable, uh, just by the nature of actually just reducing energy at all costs. So for an example, and yes, this is my dog Waffles. I use my dogs when I teach a lot to kind of help explain things, but Waffles is exhibiting an energy conservation behavior here. She's wearing a sweater instead of having the heat turned up by the thermostat. So yes, the air around her has not necessarily gotten warmer, but her radiating heat from her body has reduced because now she's warmed up. I think we all kind of know about the whole dressing up warm instead of turning the heat up, but that is a conservation behavior. Turning off the lights when not in use or not in the room, turning off the water while brushing your teeth, taking a cold shower. All these things are behaviors that we do to reduce our energy usage. On the other side of this, being energy efficient is when we are using a technology to reduce our energy usage. So we ask for some help from a technological standpoint. Again, we're reducing our energy usage, so we reduce the amount of money that we have to pay. But because we're using a technology and we're being more efficient in terms of an energy transfer, energy changing there, we can still do more with the same amount of energy. The best example of this is going to be LED light bulbs. I think we all kind of understand them at this point, but LED light bulbs are a really wonderful example of, first of all light bulbs have to convert electrical energy to radiant energy. LEDs convert 90 to 95% of the electrical energy into radiant energy. Those old incandescent light bulbs, they only convert 10% into radiant energy. The rest of it is heat, which I don't think we buy light bulbs to heat our houses, but that is an example of energy efficient technology. Smart technology like smart bulbs, plugs, outlets, power strips, even a smart thermostat or a programmable thermostat, those are all energy efficient ways to reduce our energy usage. And they don't always have to be technologically advanced. A low flow shower head is also an energy efficient technology to reduce the flow of water, which would also reduce how much water you're wasting, as well as how much water you have to heat to, take a shower. And one last one, I didn't have it here on as an example, but it's one that I tell students about a lot, is if you have an attached garage in adverse weather conditions, whether it's really, really cold or really hot, leaving your home through the garage is actually the most energy efficient way to do so. Of course, I don't think you have to necessarily be one way or the other, but we can be energy conscious. My house is full of LED light bulbs and smart technology, but we still turn off things if we don't need them. No need to waste the energy. It's kind of smart technology can kind of help us reduce unnecessary energy usage as well. Especially if you leave the house and you forget to turn something off, you have the ability to do so from anywhere pretty much in the country. So what I like to think about when it comes to energy efficiency and conservation is kind of thinking about the science behind all of it. So I'm going to take you back real quick to sixth grade science class about the three methods of heat transfer. And I promise there's a point to this: conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction, heat transfer or thermal transfer through direct contact. Convection through gas or a liquid. And radiation from one object to another through a medium. So I bring this up because when we're looking at trying to stay comfortable, especially in the wintertime, this is paramount in understanding how this operates. Looking at this house in the wintertime, we can't tell how it's doing without having that thermal image. That thermal image is telling us where the home itself is losing heat. And I'm not talking about air leakage. I'm talking about those three methods of heat transfer. Windows, we obviously know a lot of you're going to lose heat through the windows. Now, you can use window coverings, having blinds or curtains or both, to change the temperature of the surface of it to some degree. So that way the temperature in the room and the temperature of the curtain are going to be a little bit closer to each other than they would be to a window, because hot's going to go to cold all the time. So if you have your couch set up by the window all the time, you're going to most likely be more cold than you normally would. So just altering, maybe put the couch toward the interior of the home and the TV that generates heat by itself by the windows. Little things like that doesn't cost any money. Yeah, it changes the look of your room a little bit, but it is a way to better understand maybe what makes us uncomfortable and what can lead us to changing the thermostat to cost us more money. So with that in mind, the number one question that I get What should I set my thermostat to? Now, the Department of Energy for a long time said, like in the summertime, so that's we're getting close to, you should set it to 78. Um, my wife knows that if we set that to 78 in this house, we're sweating. That is way too hot. Now, yes, that's less energy. I can't disagree with that. But I generally start here that there is no recommended temperature setting. The main reason I don't recommend a temperature setting is because 72 degrees in your house or whomever I'm talking to will not be the same as 72 degrees in my house. It will not feel the same, not even close. Even the homes that if you have the areas that have like kind of the same model of home next to each other, we're not the same type of people. We don't have the same tendencies. Maybe there's more people living there, but it won't cost the same. So this is a very important piece to me because it's like, yes, I could give you a recommended temperature setting, but I could either be, I don't know, I could help you out or I could cost you more money. So what I usually break it down to for customers is right here. When it comes to your thermostat, when it comes to heating and cooling your home, just know, depending on your setup, whether you have gas, heat, or all electric, every degree you change your thermostat can increase or decrease your usage anywhere from as little as 1% per degree to as much as 5% per degree. So, for example, in the wintertime, or excuse me, summertime, that's coming up here, what I'll do when I go to bed, we usually have the air conditioner down to 70. Keeps the house nice and cool. The sun's down. It's the coolest part of the day, the evening. And when I wake up, I jump the thermostat up to 73, maybe 74. So there's a little bit of time there. It saves some energy. And the house still holds on to that coolness. And eventually, once it warms up, then the air conditioner starts turning back on. I don't usually recommend if you're going to change the thermostat a whole lot more than 3 or 4 degrees at a time. At least while if you're coming and going, a lot, it's not a big deal. But if you're going to be gone for a long period of time, of course, you don't need to necessarily overcool an area that you're not going to be in. But that's the main bit of information I want you to kind of get from about how to handle a thermostat. Bundling up, lowering the thermostat. You can even use a space heater. I know we're not really getting into space heater season, but I think space heaters are okay for supplemental heat. I'm in a small room down here. So if it's just me sometimes in the winter, I'll turn the space heater on for 20 minutes, warm the room up a little bit, and I'm good. I don't need to turn the thermostat and heat the rest of my house. The dogs are fine. They have fur. They'll be okay. But heat the rest of my house. So even electric blankets, that's another wonderful invention. You're laying on it, warms the body up. You don't have to think about warming up the rest of the house. It's just different ways of saving energy depending on what your comfort level is. And then last thing in the summertime, I can't stress this enough. Fans cool people, they don't cool rooms. A room might feel cooler because the air is moving around, but the temperature, the actual air temperature has actually increased. But that wind chill effect, that's what cools us off. And last part for our crash course here, the breakdown, the average breakdown. Obviously it depends on our weather and climate conditions, depends on lifestyle, but generally speaking, 50 to 60% of your OPPD bill is going to be heating and cooling. Heating your house, cooling your house. If you have a natural gas furnace, it's probably going to be a little bit less than that during the winter months. But generally speaking, that's the bulk of where your energy usage is coming from, is from making your house a specific temperature. If you have all electric, that number is going to be even a little bit higher because now you have to also consider water heating is included in that. So now water heating was always going to add probably about 20% to the amount of your bill, the amount of your bill that is goes towards that. For at least in my home, we cook a lot. So the kitchen side of things is about 20% of our OPPD bill. That's, just using refrigerator, freezer, coffee pot, toaster, oven, stove, cooking food, essentially. From there, we don't have kids, so we don't have a ton of laundry to do, but we have, washing machine, dryer, and electronics kind of occupy about 10%, maybe 15% from time to time. Lighting is probably even less than that 10%, especially with all LEDs in the house, and they're only on where we need them to be on. LEDs just really don't use a lot of energy. So this is, like I said, this is a rough estimate about how much of your bill, your OPPD bill, is going toward these specific things that use electricity in the home. All righty. With all of that in our back pocket, we're going to jump into some utility definitions because we're going to kind of, we're in a small scale, and now we're going to kind of pull back a little bit before we go back inside. So these are going to be the four main kind of terms, 4 or 5 terms that I'll use kind of going forward to explain the rest of the presentation here. Load, that's the term that we use that basically just means that's the electricity that customers are using. That's the electricity that customers are taking off of the grid, uh, whether it's residential, commercial, small business, streetlights, anything that uses electricity, that's load to us, period. Or otherwise, we can call that energy usage at a small scale, but we call it load. Now, the other side of that thing in between the grid is where the load is coming from, where the load is being able to pull from, the generation side of things. So that's going to be electricity generated from power plants. So for OPPD, we have wind, solar, coal, and natural gas. Generates the electricity, goes to the grid, customers take it off. We call that load. What goes into the grid is called generation. Now, as much as we would love it to be really consistent, just not the way it is, especially summertime between 3 and 7 p.m. Everybody's coming home from school or coming home from work, turning the air conditioner down. That is what we would call a peak. So it's a peak in the energy usage, a little kind of a jump in the energy usage. We also refer to that as demand. That's the demand on the system in a short period of time, whether that's due to weather, time of day, other factors, usually a few hours, not a whole day. It's going to be 4 to 6 hours, somewhere in there. We can think about that as, like it says here, spikes in the load, and then balance. We're not going to spend a whole bunch of time here, but the grid must maintain a frequency of 60 hertz. And that essentially is just saying the amount of load going in versus the amount of generation going into the grid and the amount of load coming off the grid have to be equal to maintain that frequency and to maintain grid stability and balance. Balance can come a variety of different ways. We're actually going to learn a few of those today. Peaking stations, customers reducing energy, kind of what we just talked about, and demand side management programs. So now that we have that information, here's our quick electricity 101 of how electricity gets from the power plant to your home. First off, obviously, it starts off with generation. Again, OPPD has wind, solar, natural gas, and coal. It depends on the day, depends on the weather, of what percentage is going to be generated from each one. Just kind of depends on everything that's going on. Excuse me. Once that's generated, it has to go on transmission lines, but before it does that, it actually has to start through a substation with transformers that boost the voltage. You can kind of think about, before you get to the interstate, you don't just go from a side street to the interstate. You have to get the on-ramps. You have to get your speed boosted up to get onto the interstate. So we use that substation to boost the voltage of electricity for it to travel on transmission lines. Now, sometimes those transmission lines travel through the city, end up at another substation. Some of them will travel through the country, as you see in this picture here. The long distances that they have to travel, they ultimately are going to start losing a little bit of the voltage. So that's why we boost it up a lot more, because they're going to lose a little bit in the process. Now, I think we all know that we can't take a transmission line and connect it to the house. That's way too many volts. So the off-ramp of our electricity interstate is another substation with transformers that decrease the voltage. So they lower that. So you can kind of see right in the top middle of the picture, those are transmission lines coming in to that substation at our arboretum, and they'll lower the voltage, and then the electricity will leave the substation on distribution lines. And these distribution lines literally do just that. They distribute electricity to the surrounding neighborhoods, businesses, you name it. The size of that substation is going to depend on what's around it. So there's that one more transformer. It's going to lower the voltage one more time, because now it's at its final destination. It's going to take that service line, whether it's above ground or below ground, and it's going to add electricity to the home. So that's how we get electricity to the home. Now you can imagine that's just one house, and that's a lot of power lines. That's a lot of infrastructure. And we have about a little over 400,000 customers that use electricity. So we have to have a way to sometimes balance when those peak load moments happen. So let's get into the demand side management programs here. This part of the definition area that we're going to be covering is right here in blue, the peak or the demand, those spikes in load, whether it's time of day, weather, other factors. Remember, couple hours at a time. So we have two main programs on our residential side for demand side management. That's going to be our smart thermostat program and our Cool Smart program. I'll start with the Smart Thermostat program overview. So this is a program that you can sign up for if you have a smart thermostat, and you would get initial bill credit of $100. And every year you participate in the program, you get $30. It runs roughly from May to October, but it's up to 15 events, which essentially would be 15 days, but up to 15 events per year. So it's not literally every day from May all the way through October. It would be 15 select dates throughout the year. And the time frame that it could occur in is going to be between 12 and 9 p.m. And it's usually only for about 4 hours. So it could be 12 to 4, it could be 1 to 5, something to that effect. There is an opt-out option through the Smart Thermostat app that you have for your smart thermostat. And this is also where you would enroll in OPPD's program here. I have all the brands listed there, but for a specific of like which model, because some of the really older ones, whether it's Ecobee, Sensi, or Honeywell, whatever it might be, may not qualify, but on our website, we have a full list of every model under each one that qualifies to participate in the program. Now, the way this program works is we kind of start off with, okay, we see that our peak is coming, and that's going to happen from our energy forecasters and load predictors that are saying, oh, hey, we have a really hot day coming. We predict that we're going to have this big spike around this time. So we're going to run an event essentially. So what'll happen is the thermostat will be, so say, let's use a temperature setting of 74. Your thermostat set at 74, an event gets started. It's going to pre-cool your house for 1 hour. And what it'll do is it'll lower the temperature 3 degrees. So now we're down to 71 for 1 hour. It'll keep it there for 1 hour, keep your house pre-cooled. And then once the event begins, it will raise the thermostat 3 degrees above the original set point, which for us in our example here was 74 degrees. So it'll go up to 77. So now we have between 71 and 77 for our house to warm up to, essentially. But in that period of time, you think about that, for about 4 hours there, the air conditioner won't be running. Now, eventually, once it gets up to 77, if it does within that time frame, the air conditioner is going to turn on. But you think about one house doing that, it does reduce your energy quite a bit. A tremendous amount. Your air conditioner is not running. Think about, it's not just one, thousands of homes doing that. So you think about the way that peak demand starts to look. If you actually get a few thousand people, it kind of comes down a little bit more. So then once that time is over, the temperature is returned back to its original set point. So back down to 74 in our example, and you're done. And that's it. The Cool Smart program operates somewhat similar, but it is different because it's a physical device. So this one, participating in the program, signing up, you get a $30 bill credit. Every year you participate, you get a $20 bill credit. This one only runs between June and September and only up to 12 events per year. And I didn't mention this about Smart Thermostat, but it's the same thing. It's only going to be weekdays and it'll never be holidays. It'll also, for the Cool Smart program, it only runs from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And you can opt out to as many as 5 events. If you feel that, like if you have, I have a family coming over, we just can't run, I don't want this program running during that time. So, which totally fine. Excuse me. The eligibility for this, though, however, you must own a single family home. And because there is a free outdoor device that gets installed on your air conditioner. So it's a literal device. It's about the size of a shoebox and it gets wired into your air conditioner. And you cannot also be enrolled in the Smart Thermostat program. The Cool Smart program operates by a signal being sent from a radio antenna, radio tower, out to the customers that are participating to actually operate this. And I'll talk about how it operates in just a moment, but I want to bring this up. Because of the technology, the way that this works, that it's a radio signal that's being sent out, we can only guarantee that if you live in these zip codes, that it will reach your home. Anything beyond these zip codes, we can't guarantee that it will actually reach the home. So we can't necessarily assume that it will help reduce the load on the system. So if you're outside of that right now, we wouldn't be able to participate. But if you are inside what that is, one of your zip codes, you would be able to participate in the program. So what that looks like then, again, forecast, it's going to be really hot. We have a lot of demand. We have a peak that we think it's going to happen. So they send a signal to the Cool Smart devices starting at 3 o'clock. And what they do this time, there's no pre-cooling or anything like that. They only turn the air conditioner on or off. So they'll run for 15 minutes, turn them off for 15 minutes, run for 15 minutes, turn off for 15 minutes. So that process happens between 3 and 7 p.m. And you can imagine, again, one house, yes, you reduce your energy usage a little bit because it's not running. But your blower does stay running to at least continue to circulate the air in the home. And again, one house, okay, not bad. But if you have thousands, and we have tens of thousands of customers on this program, you create a nice little reduction in terms of our peak load that kind of comes through. Once the time frame's over, the air conditioner returns to normal operation. Now, if you're wondering, will it raise the temperature in my house? That really depends on how efficient your home is, how efficient your air conditioner is, the temperature you had it set at the time, because it doesn't affect anything like that. But yeah, just how much insulation you have. So some people didn't experience it at all. Some people experience it go up a little bit. It's really hit or miss. It just depends on the construction of your home. Now, the impact of these programs, we can actually show, at least in terms of some numbers here. Now, when I say megawatts, 1 megawatt is 1,000 kilowatts, roughly about the amount of energy a home uses in a month. But with our smart thermostat program, year over year, we've seen an increase in the amount of megawatts that we've been able to reduce from the grid during those demand moments. With Cool Smart, it kind of leveled off and dropped a little bit, but that drop also coincided with smart thermostat going up because we did have customers say, hey, I have a smart thermostat. I'd rather do it that way. So we'll participate that way. And then just wanted to throw this in there. I talked to the product manager of our demand side management programs, and he was talking to me about the C&I, commercial and industrial curtailment. It gives them an option of being able to actually curtail their usage, which also contributes to that demand side management. So there is a commercial side of things of being able to reduce energy usage as well. Now, I kind of touched on some of the benefits for the customer in this situation. Anytime that you're not using energy, reduced utility bills. But additionally is when you have less energy, you have less of a carbon footprint. Bottom line. And I'll get to a little bit more about the carbon footprint in our final segment, the why segment here, but also the financial incentives involved in participating in the programs, the demand side management programs, the bill credits for signing up, and then obviously the bill credits for participating each year. We do have energy efficiency rebates, things like that. I'll show you where to find those at the end of the presentation. But to really hammer home all of this stuff is kind of one of my favorite areas to talk about, because I had this wise fourth grader ask me like 5 years ago, if we're in the business of selling electricity to people, why would I be there to tell them how to use less? To him, it didn't make any sense. And it was a brilliant question, because we think about it. Everywhere we go to shop or to buy something, no one's going, please don't buy that much. Don't just put that back. You don't need all that. They're trying to get you to buy as much as possible. And here I am going, let me help you to use less. There's very specific reasons for this. Now, there are many reasons, but these are the 4 main ones that I like to talk about with people. So grid balance is a part of this. Balancing how much electricity we make or we generate versus how much is used. So we got the generation versus load here. It's easy, and it makes it easier to forecast and maintain sustainability and reliability on the grid if we're all conserving energy or being energy efficient when we can, or doing both. That makes the energy forecaster's job a lot easier. It makes the grid being able to be a little bit more sustainable and stable and reliable a lot easier. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like from a bigger picture. But that's another reason why we have those demand side management products and services, because it gives people the opportunity to be able to participate and kind of help out with that and being incentivized to do so. Carbon emissions. So while as a country, the politics have seemed to shift in terms of like the importance of taking care of the carbon emissions, OPPD is still committed to providing environmentally sensitive energy. So it's not just, yes, it's important to us to make sure that we still are keeping track of that and taking care of the carbon emissions aspect of it, but we also want to help customers do the same thing too. So that's where we have our indirect impact. So if your house is natural gas, you have natural gas heat, natural gas water heater, your carbon footprint would be a direct impact. So you're burning any of that, you have the byproduct, goes up through the flue pipe and into the atmosphere. That is a direct impact in terms of carbon emissions. But as I mentioned earlier, the less you use, the less energy you use, so the less you have to heat or less water you have to heat, the less carbon emissions you have. If your home is all electric, and I'll get to solar and whatnot, but if your home is all electric, so that's an electric furnace, a resistance furnace, electric water heater, like that, now your impact is going to be more indirect. So while your home is no longer putting carbon emissions, you are getting electricity from the power company, depending on what their footprint looks like at the time. Maybe they're getting most of it from renewables. That's great. And then that's kind of it's a push. You don't have an impact at that point. But if it is coming from coal or natural gas, that's more of an indirect impact. Now, obviously, customers that have solar even reduce that impact even more. So especially during the day when the sun's beautiful and shining and giving us all of its wonderful radiant energy, you're reducing your impact. So bottom line, the less energy you have to use and the less that we would have to produce essentially keeps carbon emissions down. The next one is we are a public utility. Having affordable bills is very, very important to us. We have a variety of energy assistance programs and funding to help customers be able to take care of their bills. But this is what I tell students a lot of times is that we're not owned by investors who say, hey, for example, I'm going to give you $5 billion to invest in the company. And when you give me my money back, I want 10 billion. We don't do that. The money our customers pay for their utility bills, we put right back into the company, paying our employees, taking care of the grid, upgrading things, making sure that the company and our customers are entirely taken care of in the most cost-effective manner. So to us, we want our customers to be able to afford their bills, and customer satisfaction is incredibly important in that regard as well. And lastly, energy mix. Now, me personally, I would absolutely love it if, as a whole species on this entire planet, we could get all of our energy from renewable energy sources. As it stands right now, unfortunately, there are a lot of things that cause us to use a tremendous amount of electricity that we just don't have it yet. And I say yet because I'm hopeful, but having a diverse energy mix allows us to maintain reliability on the grid. So we love to use wind and solar as much as we can, but if we can't use those, we want to be able to use the other options that we have, natural gas as much as possible, but we use the other options that are available to us and that will always be the most cost-effective for our customers as well. The last kind of piece to this is the Southwest Power Pool. If you don't know, OPPD is part of the Southwest Power Pool, which was just expanded from 14 states to 16 states on April 1st. That's not a joke. So any state in that yellow area is actually all interconnected with each other that we can help maintain reliability on the grid. This is a really big reason why we don't have rolling blackouts. We had rolling blackouts one time, and that was during that wild polar vortex in February of 2021. It was the only time we've ever had to have them. This, being a part of this Southwest Power Pool, has been a tremendous help in maintaining reliability on the grid, as well as sustainability, being able to work together as a team. So to close this segment out here, I think about it this way. So we get extreme weather, whether that's severe cold from a polar vortex or extreme heat, it increases energy needs, whether that's just regular load goes up or even the peak goes up. But if we get customers to maybe be a little bit more energy efficient, energy conscious, and say, for example, here, reduces their usage by their load, by 5 kilowatts. That's not that much. That's basically a space heater running on high for about 2.5 hours. Reduces that load, 5 kilowatts, no big deal, one house. But what if we could get 10,000 houses to do that, or even more? Remember, we have about 340,000 residential customers. So we get 10,000 houses to reduce by 5 kilowatts. That's 50,000 kilowatts. That's 50 megawatts of electricity that has been reduced on the grid, on the system. For an idea of how much energy that is 10 Fort Calhoun solar farms. And just for an example, in the bottom kind of right area there is the size of a house. So 10 of those, that's how much energy we can reduce by working together. All right, I will close out with some resources here. OPPD.com/EE stands for energy efficiency. That is going to be your hub for anything energy efficiency, for tips, do-it-yourself videos. There's a brand new usage calculator that we just created that can actually help you do a sort of like a profile of your home. It'll break it down by different rooms, different types, like the kitchen, the heating and cooling, electronics. So that way you can see a rough estimate of how much maybe your monthly bill might look. As well, on top of that, we have, if you go to youtube.com/Omaha Public Power District, we have a bunch of playlists. There is an Electricity 101 playlist. It's got 12 episodes. So it goes more in depth than what I did earlier with the Electricity 101 about electricity from the power plant to the home, as well as how we restore power, how we balance the grid, energy efficiency, and more. From there, there's also some webinars. So if you want to listen to me go into in depth into some of the other concepts like insulation and smart technology, the webinars are a good place for that as well. And as promised, our residential products, services, and rebates, OPPD.com, the residential tab under products and services, save money, save energy. We got all sorts of rebates there. Now that DIY energy assessment is a new program. It sold out really quick. We piloted that program and it sold out almost immediately. I think within maybe a week. And so we're hoping that will come back very soon. But it was it's basically doing an energy audit yourself without, you don't get to do the blower door testing, but you get to take some thermal images of your home and get a full energy report. So hopefully that'll come back soon. But all of our rebates, all of our programs and products that you can engage with are in that segment. And with that being said, there we go. Any questions, please?
Right. All righty. Thank you so much, Eric. Great presentation. We do have a couple questions in the Q&A. First one is from Ben Stallings. He's asking, why doesn't OPPD offer demand metering or communicate when peak times of day are? He says he would totally shift his usage to off-peak times if he knew when they were.
I don't know why we don't. That's time of use. Time of use is a very popular thing in a lot of areas of the country, especially a lot of areas that are really hard on electricity. So, like West Coast in particular. I haven't heard specifically why we haven't gone there. I know right now our meters we don't have the technology in our meters to be able to do time of use. I'm not going to say that it's never going to happen, but I would say we need some other technology in place before we start implementing things like time of use.
All righty. And then we have another question from an anonymous attendee asking, of the approximate 400,000 customers that OPPD has, how many are in each of these programs?
Oh, okay. So with the smart thermostat program, it's anywhere between 15 and 16,000 customers. And then the Cool Smart program, there's about 45,000 or so that are participating in that program.
All right. Another question from Ben Stallings. Why not inform customers about peaks in demand via an app or a text message so they can help without having to install any sort of smart thermostat or a similar device?
As I understand it, I think that is something that they are working on right now. We just upgraded our app. So our OPPD app, I know before it used to just be mostly OPPD Connect. It was just for outages, but now it's a full-on app. You're billing your usage history. The new outage map stuff is on there too. I would look for in the future, hopefully. I don't know how far out, but I know that is one thing that they're looking at is like ways to communicate with customers of like engaging and talking about like, hey, this is a great time to conserve energy during this peak period. Because again, not everybody can or maybe is willing to participate in a program, but they're willing to do some work in their own area. So I definitely think that's probably coming.
All righty. Another question from Ryan Wishart. 75% of households participate in Austin, Texas's public utilities AC demand management program. What percentage of OPPD's residential customers participate in Cool Smart or thermostat programs? I think we got a rough answer on that. It was around 60,000, which, if I'm doing the math right, I think that comes out to about 15% of customers.
Yeah, somewhere between 15. Yeah, I think it's about 17, 18%, something like that. Roughly is how much is what the percentage of our customers that participate. Again, a limiting factor with the Cool Smart one is the distance the signal can travel. I think there's probably more of a push to see about getting more customers with smart thermostat versus trying to expand the technology because the technology is very expensive. Whereas this smart thermostat program is already in place. So But I think that's, at least when it comes to our smart thermostat program, still fairly young compared to the Cool Smart. But when it comes to the Cool Smart one, it is the limiting factor is a technology situation.
All right. Question from Janet Bonet, I believe, or Bonnet. Do heat pumps with per room thermostat units in each room offer more efficiency in consumption?
So it so it's going to depend if it's zoned. So if the house is zoned, so if you have one heat pump, but you have a thermostat in each room, it's my guess is it's going to be zoned. That is going to be a more efficient way of distributing air, whether it's cooling or heating, to your house, depending on where you're at, as opposed to like opening and closing vents or even using what do you call dampers? Excuse me. Dampers are very effective, but if it's zoned, it does work a little bit better, makes it a little bit easier. So I would say it is a step towards being more efficient. But to zone a house is fairly costly.
Hey, another question from Ryan Wishart. Beyond carbon emissions, or excuse me, beyond carbon, emissions from fossil generation have direct negative health impacts. Are peaking generation sources dirtier per unit of energy produced, for example, Jones Street? And does peak reduction have a disproportionate impact on pollution impacts compared with conservation at other times?
Most of those questions I don't have the answer to, but what I can say, and I think this is it's probably already out there, but is that natural gas does burn cleaner when it's burned versus coal does. But I don't have, in terms of like per unit burned, what the difference is there. At our Jones Street, we have I don't remember what's all at Jones. I know we have natural gas, but I know that I think there's also a fuel oil one. But I don't know. All I do know that I can answer is that natural gas does burn cleaner than coal does, and I believe also would burn cleaner than fuel.
All right. Another question from Janet. I would like to go fully electric in my home. Is that practical and possible in Omaha?
I mean, it's easier to do that than it is to add gas. To add gas infrastructure costs a lot of money. Um, it kind of depends on what your goals are. That's going to be the long and short of it. If your goals are to save money, that's not going to be the best way to do it, because heating a home with electricity costs more money than it does to heat a home with natural gas. But if you're more concerned about your carbon footprint, then yes, absolutely, going all electric is going to be one of the best ways to go. But for sure, if you do that, you want to make sure you get a cold climate heat pump to start, so that way it's going to heat your house first before it turns over to the furnace, because it almost inevitably, especially in this part of the country, you're eventually going to probably have it go back to the furnace at some point when it gets too cold. But the technologies with heat pumps have gotten a lot better, that now they actually have cold climate heat pumps to be able to accommodate that. And there's even some other really amazing technologies for water heaters too, for electric water heaters, that they even have like heat pump water heaters that can help be even more efficient too, and help reduce kind of a little bit of that bump that you're going to get from your energy usage.
All right. Question from Clyde Anderson. Our Ecobee thermostat is part of the smart thermostat program. How can I tell if my thermostat is communicating with OPPD?
If I remember correctly, there is actually a message on it during an event that's occurring. It'll be, I don't know the exact verbiage of it, but it should show up on the thermostat that that an event is being controlled at that time. I would have to double check with the product manager to find out exactly what that would look like on an Ecobee. I know what it looks like on a Nest, because it's very similar to that. But I would have to double check with him on the exact verbiage.
All right. Question from Tanya Bauer. Did the OPPD kilowatt hour, I assume she's talking about rates, did the OPPD kilowatt hour rate change recently?
Yes, it did go up this year by about, if I remember correctly, I think it's about 6% across all customer platforms. I think the residential one is somewhere about 11 and a half cents per kilowatt hour. We're still under the national average, but it did go up this year. Yes.
Question from Cheryl Weston. With more data centers looking to come, are residential customers going to pay increased costs?
directly associated with the data center, I would say no. Um, I know that what I can say, because I'm not entirely qualified to fully answer that question, but data centers anytime we're adding load to a system, we're adding more generation, we're adding more transmission. Um, that becomes a bit complicated at times from a cost perspective. I don't know. I don't know that OPPD would say that new data center means your rates are going to go up. There's going to be a lot more that goes into it than that. But that's about as much as I feel like I probably able to answer without talking with some people higher up on that one.
All right. Question from an anonymous attendee. How far along are you in taking advantage of distributed energy resources, for example, rooftop solar and battery storage?
Um, I don't have a great answer for that. I apologize. Our We have a alternative energy team that works on new technologies and trying to find ways to make that as great as possible. We have solar rebates back again to incentivize people to be able to put solar on the home. We still work very closely with our customers to make sure that that's done in a safe manner. But as far as like what those future projects look like, last I heard there was a battery pilot, but I haven't seen any news or any information on it just yet. So right now I don't have a lot of information on that one.
All righty. Next question, again from Janet. Will OPPD be able to remain a public utility with big energy companies lobbying so strongly for privatizing energy utilities?
I don't think I'm qualified to answer that, but I will say that my feeling is it feels like to me that that's incredibly important. Nebraska being the only state in the United States that's entirely powered by public utilities. It's a sense of pride for OPPD to remain a public utility. And as far as it seems to me that the feeling and the mood of it is that we're going to continue that. We want to continue that. It's very, very important to us. But that's mostly my feeling on the matter. That is not an official statement. That's going to be above me for that one.
Absolutely. Um, Another question from an anonymous attendee. Many energy efficiency opportunities have significant upfront costs. Is OPPD doing anything to help address the financial investments so customers and the district can benefit from those same investments? For example, on-bill financing.
Yes. Boy, off the top of my head, I would have to go look, but I know for at least for starters, I know we have a lot of rebates for like weatherization projects, a new heat pump, or if you're getting a new air conditioner. We incentivize customers to be able to do that, kind of help offset that cost. There is even a tune-up rebate that we have. As far as on-bill financing, I would have to go through and look on that one. Let me see here. Actually, I think we have energy saving loans. Looking that up real quick here because I thought that we had brought that into. Yeah, so we have a partnership with the Nebraska Department of Water, Energy, and Environment (NWEE). That's OPPD is offering dollar and energy saving loans on pre-qualified products. It's on our website oppd.com under the residential tab, and then under products and services at the bottom it says energy saving loans. There's a lot more information there. So I had heard about the program. It's not directly as part of my team that I'm on, but I know that there are that is a sort of, we can't call it on-bill financing, but that is our way of being able to help customers make those energy efficiency improvements.
All right. Another question from an anonymous attendee. Low-income households can have a harder time accessing home energy efficiency improvements to save energy and money. What programs does OPPD have to help low-income homeowners and renters save with energy efficiency and conservation?
One of the main programs is going to be our energy efficiency assistance program. That you can find more information about that on the website. Again, that's going to be under our assistance programs. There's a bunch there, but the energy efficiency assistance program, it's a program designed to be able to do an energy audit of the home and then find out what areas of the home can be improved to make it more efficient. and then they'll actually install some upgrades free of charge. I think up to about $2,000, if I remember correctly, for qualified customers, to basically to help make their home more efficient, more comfortable, reduce the energy usage a little bit. But we do have some programs for that. And I know Eddie and Britton, as part of the customer advocacy team, they're always looking for other ways to try to help customers, especially our low income customers. Absolutely.
Awesome. And then one question we have from Cheryl, how is keeping the North Omaha plant going, or excuse me, how is keeping the North Omaha station plant going to be energy efficient?
I do not have an answer for that one.
All righty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looks like that's all the questions we had from other folks. One question I did have is that with the benefits of demand side management and talking about, potentially saving customers money as well as the utility, is there much interest with OPPD in attempting to expand either the amount of incentive offered or potentially expanding into further demand side management programs?
Yes, we actually, this is kind of an exercise that's almost done once a year, is looking at like, okay, is the incentive, is cost effective not only for our customers but for us, and is it advantageous in terms of like getting more people to participate in the reduction of energy in that situation? And always, what are other ways that we can do this? What are untapped resources that maybe we can, what's the easiest way for us to kind of get back in there and try to find other ways for customers to participate? Like the wonderful example the previous individual had about like sending out text messages. Like while it seems like it's not like, does that really need to be a program? But like having that option of letting people volunteer, be like, hey, I'm happy to like curtail as much energy as I can if you just let me know when you want to do it. Programs like that, even we've definitely already been talking about. I don't know when that comes down to a budget type situation, but we're always looking at other ways to add and to make sure that like, is the amount of the incentive that we're offering, is it competitive? Is it helpful for the customer? Because if the cost of heat pumps and air conditioners are going way high and our incentive hasn't kind of matched up with that, that's not going to be helpful for the customer. So we want to make sure that we keep an eye on that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and looks like that seems to be the bulk of the questions. And yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Again, thank you so much, Eric, for
Mm-hmm.
the presentation. I found it very informative, and I always love learning a little bit more about demand side management. And yeah, for folks that were maybe joined in part of the way through or are interested in watching this back later down the line, again, we will be posting this in a few weeks to our YouTube channel. That's going to be under the name Conservation Nebraska. Which we have a host of other events that have been recorded previously. Highly recommend checking them out, funding with OPPD. But yeah, we'll wrap it up there. And yeah, thank you all for coming out. Hope you have a great rest of your evening.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.